So much stress because the police have cancelled my venue, just generally done my nutting with their policing. And I always think they're setting us up to fail, but we'll see what happens. You're probably already seeing what happens if you're watching this now at 8 o'clock on a Friday night. Manchester's probably, well, whatever. Anyway, Friday Fatwa. I want to look at some of the week's news. Starting with Lincolnshire Police. Lincolnshire Police went into a school and they sent their Muslim police officer into the school to teach them about how great Islam is and how great Muslims are. I forgot that that's what we pay our police to do. Stupid me. We pay them for a propaganda campaign for Islam and for Muslims in British schools. Let me read what Lincolnshire Police said. We are pleased to have worked with a local Lincolnshire school in delivering a prevent workshop focusing on tackling Islamophobia. Please define Islamophobia. What is Islamophobia? No one defines it. Telling the truth about Islam is Islamophobia. Knowing too much about Islam is Islamophobia. Being honest is Islamophobia. The prevent workshop focuses on Islamophobia. They want to prevent Islamic attacks by tackling Islamophobia. It's insane, isn't it? It's absolutely just ridiculous. This is what they said. Prevent aims to tackle all forms of extremism. All forms of extremism. What forms? There's only one real form of extremism. We've delivered other anti-extremism sessions in the past at William Farr and other schools and have included messaging around how young people can safeguard themselves and others from being drawn towards extremism, whether it's Islamist, right-wing extremism, or indeed any other form of extremism. What other form of extremism? Well, there's about 10 Nazis in Britain. 10 idiots who wear Dr. Martens boots with stupid little green bomber jackets, and they're all inbred. There's 10 of them, right? There's 23,000 Muslims on a terror watch list. 23,000. But all forms of extremism. Of course. All forms of extremism. Politically correct bullshit. That's what it is. If you're going to teach children in schools, if the police are going to go in there, this is the police. So if the police are going into school to talk to children about Islam and the Muslim community, why don't they tell them that if you're a Muslim, you're 4 times more likely to end up in prison? Why don't they tell them that young Muslim girls in these schools, there's been 60,000 of them who had their genitals mutilated by their parents? Why don't they tell them that 90% of grooming convictions for sexual exploitation in gangs is Muslim men? 20% are actually called Muhammad. Tell them facts about Islam and Muslims. Don't go in with your bullshit trying to paint Islam in some beautiful little flowery nest, because it's not. It is not. Let me go through the 2011 census for prison population or general population in the UK. Hindus make up 1.5% of the UK population. Muslims, 5%. Sikhs, 0.8%. Let's just say 1% to round it off. Now let's go through the prison population. So Hindus make up 1.5% of the population, yet only 0.5% of the prison population. So Hindus commit no crime. Very peaceful, decent people. Actually, the statistics show that they're way less likely than any other community to commit crime. Sikhs make up 0.8% of the population. They make up 0.9% of the prison population. So average. Exactly the same. Normal. Muslims make up 5% of the population, but they represent 15.2% of the prison population. Yes, they are far more likely to commit crime if you're a Muslim. Reality, truth, facts. No, you don't like it, but look at the graph. Look how much the graph and the picture just tells you it straight in your face. There it is. Muslims, Islam, crime. Teach that. If we're going to spend our taxpayer money on police forces to go in our schools, don't go in telling them how great Islam is. There's nothing great about Islam. There's nothing great. And a Muslim police officer at the same time. That's all we pay them for, is it? Well, you're not paid for that. You're paid to protect, serve, uphold the law and arrest criminals. Not some PR campaign for Islam throughout our schools. Jeremy Corbyn. Let me take a big sigh before I talk about this. Jeremy Corbyn and MEND. Have you heard of MEND? MEND are an extremist, radical, jihadist organisation who have become very politically motivated in trying to sway elections in our country. Jeremy Corbyn yesterday hosted an event by MEND in our parliament. Yep. You saw the uproar recently over the interview I done with Tapan Ghosh, what a lad he was. That's the Indian lad, the Hindu lad, who stood in parliament and recited verses from the Quran which incite violence. Told the truth. Nothing incitement, nothing bad. Massive backlash about that. Now we have MEND. MEND talking in Parliament. Where's the backlash? Jeremy Corbyn pitching in front of a big MEND sign. Just so we know, who are MEND? Okay? The Henry Jackson Society report showed that men promote extremism and harbour anti-Semites. They give a platform to Islamists. They said Jihadi John was a lovely man. Okay? Jihadi John, the mass executioner, lovely man, according to MEND. They represent all the radical groups, all the radical extremists, etc., etc. Azad Ali. Azad Ali is in charge of MEND. Let me quote what he previously said. Azad Ali, MEND are extremist jihadist group. They're in our parliament with Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn's working with a man called Azad Ali. Azad Ali says, and I'll quote him specifically, democracy, if it means not implementing Sharia, of course nobody agrees with that. Jeremy Corbyn, the communist, works with this man. Okay? The Daily Mail said that this man, Azad Ali, Jeremy Corbyn's friend, has to be his friend, he's an associate working with him. The Daily Mail called him a hardline Islamic extremist who supports the killing of British and American soldiers in Iraq by fellow Muslims. He took them to court. He lost the case. Because what Azad Ali said, what he said was, British soldiers are legitimate targets. This is what he said in a speech. He's just been welcomed into our parliament by Jeremy Corbyn. That's where we're at. Let me tell you something else about men. One of their men was transcribed speaking in a mosque in Greater Manchester, where what he said was, and this will pretty much be word for word because I've studied this group a while ago. What he said is that we can sway the seats in 30 elections. All the political groups, Tories, Labour, Lib Dem, they will all want to work with us because of the power we bring. Now, swing the seats, and what he explains that because of the Muslim demographics is so concentrated on certain areas, to win the election you might need 1,000 or 2,000 votes in certain areas. Well, they can guarantee that. Muslims can guarantee that. They can sit there and say, we can guarantee from our influence in this community to get you the Muslim vote, which will then win you that seat. Now, he said 30 seats. We've just had an election very recently. How many seats did Labour gain? 30. You see what's happening here? You see how it works? This is our politics, where we're being sold out by Labour politicians, all the politicians, because they want to keep power and maintain power. They know the future of maintaining power is with the Islamic community. That's the future. If we look in Manchester, where this speech happened, in Manchester, the Muslim population has doubled every 10 years. So it went from 50,000 to 100,000 from 2001 to 2011. Now you double that again. Manchester's only got a population of 500,000 people. You double that again after 10 years, from 100,000 to 200,000. You see where you are in 2 or 3 generations. You understand what's happening. So you understand why Labour, why Jeremy Corbyn, why our political parties, they're happy to be in bed with these groups. It maintains them power. Now, what MEND ask the politicians what they ask them to sign up to is a Muslim manifesto. They have to agree to these commitments, and then MEND will fund the politicians. MEND actually funded the second in command of Labour for Manchester. MEND funded their campaign, gave them £5,000. An extremist radical Muslim group gave them £5,000. They give politicians across our country money for their campaigns. They're taking blood money from Muslim extremist radical groups so long as they agree to sign this declaration which says this. They commit to recording Islamophobia as a category of hate crime by all police forces in England and Wales. This is why people are getting nicked for tweets and messages on Facebook talking about Islam. This is why. Money. How can MEND, an extremist group, be funding our parliamentary process? Because they've got a bottomless pit of Saudi petrol money. Commit to offering Sharia-compliant student loans to make higher and further education accessible to British Muslims. So favourable treatment for Muslims. Support de-radicalisation programmes and work with Muslim communities. In other words, fund Muslims to try and deal with Muslims' other problems. Commit to support for an independent Palestine and an end of Israeli occupation by December 2017. This is MEND. This is who Jeremy Corbyn probably predicted, if we have an election next week, to be the leader of our country. This is who all the 16 to 24-year-olds want to vote for. This man shares a platform with this group, this organisation. Now let's talk about EU nurses. There's been a story. In the news it said the EU nurses are turning their back on the UK. Now that sounds bad, sounds terrible, doesn't it? There's been a 90% reduction in the amount of nurses coming to the UK from the European Union. But if you look at this with previous news reports from just 2 years before, there's a report that showed 80,000 UK students were told they couldn't train as a nurse. So 80,000 British students, our people, they wanted to train as nurses, but they couldn't get on the courses, despite 4 out of 5 people in the NHS being from overseas, okay? Their workforce being foreign. It's cheaper to bring in foreign nurses from the European Union who are happy to work for lesser wages. Of course it is. It's cheaper to bring them in than to train up our own, to invest our money in providing work for our own people, training and skills for our own people. This is a good thing. You here, you nurses don't want to come here? Well, we're going to train up British workers. In August, we reported that the NHS will recruit 10,000 more British nurses after Brexit. For me, win. That's it. So when you hear all these negative stories, there's usually another side to that story, and I want to bring you that side of the story. So we might lose 90% of the people, but we're going to train up British nurses, train up British workers. Same with on the halal industry. I think we imported 5,000 Pakistani butchers because of halal. Stop halal! Train up British butchers. Madness. Time for the end. Time for the end, which is Hadith for the week. Hadith for the week's always fun because we can always laugh at the expense of the bullshit scripture in Islam. So the Hadith, for you, those who don't know it, is the sayings and the narratings of the Prophet Muhammad, all the stories and all the words put together that Muslims will deem on how to live their life. Now this one, this is Sahih Bukhari. Sahih means authentic. This is authentic. There's 5 top Hadiths that are the most recognised in the world. This is one of them. Okay? 558, 188. This is what it says. During the pre-Islamic period of ignorance, I saw a she-monkey surrounded by a number of monkeys, a female monkey surrounded by loads of male monkeys. They were all stoning her because it had committed illegal sexual intercourse. I too stoned it along with them. Picture that. A big bearded Muslim picking up a stone and stoning a female monkey. Right? This is pre-Islamic era. So what this hadith tells us is that Muslims base their religious, so the sayings of Muhammad or what Muhammad's laws should be, as in stoning women, has come from monkeys. It's come from monkeys. That's every time when we read a hadith each week, we're going to realise how ridiculous this ideology, this religion is. They stoned a fucking monkey. A monkey. Right, anyway, I've got loads to do. Lutz is here. If you're following, if you're subscribing,